Hi guys, welcome back. If you were young when you started church, then you probably were introduced to this song called Father Abraham. It goes something like this. Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you, so let's just praise the Lord. And then they give you some kind of emotion to do, and then they would sing the verse again and give you another motion, another motion, another motion. So they had you hopping and jumping and skipping and waving your arms. And really, the song was kind of designed to help you get all of your wiggles out before they had you sit down so you could do your lesson for the day. But it was a really fun song to sing. I'm Pastor Barry, pastor at Parkview Christian Church, and this is Grab and Go God. And I would like to remind you what we're doing here is we are kind of recapping the biggest story, which is the Sunday morning curriculum we're doing for our young people at Parkview Christian Church. Down below in the description, you will see the links that will take you out to the Biggest Story website where you can find the video that introduces today's lesson. It also provides a lesson from Crosswalk where they taught the full lesson, as well as the printables that you can download to kind of follow up from this lesson. This is kind of like a little midweek thing that we're putting together just to kind of help people get plugged into what we're doing. And so today we're going to talk about Abraham. But before we talk about Abraham, let's kind of move back and talk about where we've been. This is lesson 6, and in the previous 5 lessons, we have been talking about the problem statement. And the problem is sin. You see, God created man, Adam and Eve, male and female. However, man decided not to do things God's way, and he decided to do things his way. And so guess what? It introduced the idea of sin. Sin continued, and we had the very first murder where Cain killed Abel, and sin continued to grow, continued to grow. And then God hit the reset button, and he sent this man Noah into an ark. And you need to remember something. Noah went into that ark with sin. So when he came back out of the ark, sin came with Noah, and guess what? Even though God had hit the reset button and washed the world clean, as man began to repopulate the earth, guess sin continued to happen. So now we're going to be moving into a section where God is going to begin to put in place his method for how he's going to finally deal with sin. Now, God's not necessarily judging sin at this point. God is trying to build a path for man to make a choice to come back to him. Remember, all of this started with a choice. Man's choice to choose the knowledge of good and evil over God. So God is about to give us another choice, but to do that, he's going to have to make a nation amongst nations. And he's going to start with this guy named Abram. Now, Abram wasn't particularly a great guy. When he started out, he was worshiping false gods, just like many of the people in his area. He had a wife, and he was married, but they couldn't have any kids. Abram's about 75 years old when God comes to him and says, "Hey, Abram, I want you to go. I want you to leave all this behind you. Okay, you're going to take your wife with you." And we find out later that he's going to take a couple of his relatives with him. But I want you to leave the life you're leading behind. That's kind of complicated, isn't it? I mean, I like my life. The things that I do, the things that I have, the things that I've earned. I like my life. And God comes to Abram and he says, you know what? Where you're at is leading you down a path that, well, it's sinful. You're worshiping false gods, and you're doing things that should not be done, but I have a better path for you. And that path is my path. So I want you to go. And, well, the thing is that Abram probably looked at God and said, go where? God's like, well, tell you what, you start walking, and I'll let you know when we get there. I can remember as a kid and even as a parent when my boys were young and we would go on trips, and the question was always, are we there yet? We're tired of riding in the car, we're tired of taking the trip, are we there yet? And you know what? Abram wasn't there until God said he was there. He didn't tell him how long, how far, how much. He just told him to go. But he did give Abram some promises if he would go. He says, hey, look, Abram, if you go, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bless your life immensely if you will just go. I'm going to bless you financially. I'm going to bless you, and anybody that blesses you, I will bless. And I'm even going to take care of your enemies, and anybody that curses you, I will curse. But here's the most important thing, Abram. Your wife is barren? I'm telling you that if you will go and you will do things my way, not only are you going to have a child, but guess what? You are going to be the father of a nation. As a matter of fact, I want you to take a look, Abram, up at those stars in the sky. You try to count those stars, and you know what? You won't be able to count. You won't be able to count those, and you know what? You won't be able to count your descendants. I want you to take a look at the dust on the ground. I want you to try to count the grains of dust. It can't be done. Abram, you realize if you follow me, I am going to make your nation so mighty that they will not be able to count your descendants. That's kind of impressive. The song says Father Abraham had many sons. Well, we're going to find out Abraham only really had 2 sons. He had Isaac and he had Ishmael. Total another story. We will get to them. But as Abram's descendants began to have descendants and began to have descendants, and you know what? Israel was born, and it was a nation. And then eventually Israel would give birth to Christ. And then you know what? Eventually Christ would go to the cross for each and every one of us. And you know what? Eventually we would come along. And when we follow Christ, it says we are adopted into a relationship from our choices. That means we technically are sons of Abraham. The guy all the way back that God simply said go, had to make a choice to go. And you know what? Here it is. We have received a blessing because of him. You know, in the here and now, you probably think about this lesson. You think there is no way this applies to me. Actually, it does. You see, every relationship with God is kind of like a journey. You take it one step at a time. And sometimes the very first step is the hardest step. Because it's that very first step that requires us to go. It requires us to leave behind the things that we've got in our current life that we maybe don't really need to have, or maybe they're just kind of getting in the way of our relationship with God. And he calls us to leave them behind and follow him. That's kind of what Jesus said all the time when he was standing up and talking. He was all about, follow me, follow me, follow me. And that's what God told Abram, and that's what we need to do, is we need to learn how to follow God. Now, it probably won't take us to a place where we have to wander around a countryside and live in a tent. At least I really hope so, because I'm not much into camping. But I do want you to know that it is going to require you to make some changes in your life. It is going to mean that you're going to have to leave some things behind, and you're probably going to have to move your life in some different directions. That's just part of the adventure with God. And you know what? That's part of the choices that we have to make if we want to choose God. So the question you have to begin to ask yourself is, are you willing to make the choices to follow God? Are you willing to be like Abram, even though you were there and you had your life and you had it all planned out, and God comes along and says, go, are you willing to put it all aside and just go? I'm looking forward to this series on Abram and Abraham, and I hope you are too. This has been Grab and Go God. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Bye.